This country is so small that on a map of Africa, it almost disappears. Its land is tiny, its population is small, its domestic market is limited, and almost everything important has to be imported from somewhere else. On paper, a country like this should have a hard time becoming rich. But Seychelles is now among the African countries with the highest income per capita. And that is what makes the story strange. Seychelles does not have massive oil reserves. It does not have giant industries. It does not have a military force that scares the world. So what does Seychelles actually have? How did this tiny point in the Indian Ocean become one of Africa's wealthiest countries, and why is it now caught in the interests of major powers? To understand Seychelles, we have to begin with what it lacks. Because from its limitations, this country found a way to make people come from around the world and pay a very high price. Seychelles sits far away from the center of the world. The country is located in the western Indian Ocean, about 1,600 kilometers from Kenya and roughly 1,100 kilometers from Madagascar. On a map of Africa, Seychelles looks less like a country and more like a small dot scattered across the sea. There is no large landmass attached to it, no huge city that immediately grabs global attention. What exists instead is an archipelago of around 115 islands, with Victoria on Mahe Island serving as the political and economic center of the country. From the beginning, Seychelles did not have many of the advantages that larger countries take for granted. Its total land area is only around 446 square kilometers. Its population is about 122,000 people, with most of them concentrated on Mahe. To put that into perspective, this is a country with fewer people than many small cities in Indonesia. Its market is small, its labor force is limited, and the space to build large-scale industry is extremely narrow. Yet the country's economic numbers tell a very different story. In 2024, Seychelles' GDP per capita reached around 17,858 US dollars, or roughly 318 million rupiah per person. That is where the story becomes unusual. Seychelles has a high economic value, even though its options for building wealth from its own land are extremely limited. Its natural beauty is obvious, but beauty alone does not automatically sustain a country. Many of the islands are made up of granite hills, narrow beaches, and low-lying coral islands. Large-scale farming is difficult to imagine. Big factories are not easy to build in a country split apart by the sea. As a small island nation, Seychelles also lives with higher costs. Many essential goods have to be brought in from overseas. Food, fuel, machinery, and basic supplies all depend heavily on shipping routes and the global economy. When global prices rise, a small country like Seychelles has very little room to protect itself from the impact. From all of this, Seychelles does not look like an obvious candidate for wealth. If we measure it by the standards of large countries, Seychelles seems to start the race from the very back. But from that limited position, the country's story began to change. Seychelles found value in the one thing that had always surrounded it, restricted it, and kept it alive at the same time: the sea. Seychelles does not sell itself like an ordinary tourist destination. It does not have vast land where thousands of cheap hotels can be built. It does not have long highways designed for mass tourism. It does not have a massive city that can absorb millions of visitors without pressure. So Seychelles does not sell quantity, it sells rarity. A remote island nation, clean beaches, blue water, expensive resorts, a vacation experience that makes people feel like they are buying access to a place that not everyone can reach. Tourism then became one of the main pillars of the Seychellois economy. The numbers show how important this sector is. According to the Seychelles trade portal, tourism is the country's largest economic pillar, contributing directly and indirectly around 72% of GDP, about 70% of foreign exchange earnings, and more than 30% of employment. Before the pandemic, in 2019, Seychelles received 384,204 visitors. That was more than 3 times the country's population. For a nation with roughly the population of a packed stadium, that number shows just how deeply Seychelles depends on outsiders coming in. Spending money, staying in hotels, eating at restaurants, and buying the island experience. Seychelles managed to make the world travel to a place that is barely visible on the map. But beaches were only one door. There was another economic engine working behind the scenes, one that many people rarely notice. Seychelles does not only sell scenery. At the port of Victoria, tuna vessels arrive, unload their catch, restock supplies, and move seafood from the Indian Ocean into the global trade network. For a country with very little land, Seychelles controls a maritime space much larger than anything it can build on the ground. And that is where the country found its second major source of income after tourism. Victoria has become one of the important hubs of the Indian Ocean tuna industry. The European Parliament has described Seychelles as an operational and logistics center for tuna fishing activity in the Indian Ocean. The value is not small. World Bank WITS data shows that in 2024, Seychelles' exports of prepared tuna, skipjack, and bonito reached around $273.8 million, with a volume of more than 43.3 million kilograms. The buyers were not minor markets either. France, the United Kingdom, Italy, the Netherlands, and Germany were among the main destinations. One of the most important facilities is Indian Ocean Tuna, a tuna processing factory located at the fishing port in Victoria. The European Union delegation has noted that the factory produces an average of around 1.5 to 2 million cans of tuna per day, supplying major brands such as Petit Navire in France and John West in the United Kingdom. The impact reaches ordinary people. The World Bank has stated that fisheries make a major contribution to the country's annual GDP and support around 17% of the population. In a small country, a number like that means many families are connected to what happens around the docks. Ships arriving, fish being unloaded, factories running, containers moving, and foreign money entering the economy. But this strength comes with a risk that cannot be ignored. Tuna is not a resource that can simply be forced to grow on demand. Catch levels depend on fish stocks, regional rules, ocean conditions, and competition from foreign vessels across the Indian Ocean. That means Seychelles cannot simply take as much as possible and assume the economy will remain safe. The same sea that made the country wealthy has to be protected. From there, Seychelles moved into a more serious stage. This small country began treating the sea as a broader national asset, something to protect, measure, manage, and use as a path toward a different kind of economy. After tourism and tuna became two major sources of income, Seychelles began to understand one thing clearly. For a country this small, the sea could not only be treated as a place to catch fish or sell beautiful views. The sea had to be treated as a national asset. Seychelles' land area is only around 446 square kilometers, but the marine area included in its marine spatial planning covers around 1.35 million square kilometers. The contrast is massive. Its land is tiny, but its ocean space is enormous. This is where Seychelles entered the idea of the blue economy. In practice, that means using the ocean to create economic growth, jobs, and income, while also protecting marine health so that one generation does not simply use everything up. One of the most interesting steps came when Seychelles used debt as a way to protect the ocean. In 2016, the country carried out a debt-for-nature swap. Part of its national debt was restructured so that money could be redirected toward marine conservation and climate adaptation. The Commonwealth recorded the value of that debt conversion at $21.6 million. With this approach, Seychelles was not only asking the world for help, it offered a deal: ease the debt, protect the ocean, and give the blue economy a longer future. 2 years later, Seychelles drew global attention again. In 2018, the country launched the world's first sovereign blue bond, a type of bond used to fund ocean protection and sustainable fisheries. Through that program, Seychelles raised $15 million from international investors. The money was directed toward marine conservation and sustainable fishing. For a small country, this was a major step. Seychelles successfully turned the ocean into a reason for global finance to come in. The sea was no longer making money only through fish and hotels. It was now also creating financial trust in the future of the country's ocean economy. The money was not left sitting in documents. The government of Seychelles said the proceeds from the Blue Bond were used to expand marine protected areas, improve the management of priority fisheries, and develop the blue economy. This is where the ocean began to enter a more structured system. There was funding, there were projects, there was oversight, and there was a longer-term economic goal. The biggest result appeared in marine protection. Seychelles committed to increasing its protected marine areas from just 0.04% to 30% of its ocean territory. In 2020, the country announced that this target had been reached through the designation of new marine protected areas. That was not a small decision. 30% of Seychelles' ocean territory means hundreds of thousands of square kilometers of marine space have to be managed more carefully. From that point, Seychelles changed the way it looked at the sea. The country was no longer only asking how many fish could be caught today, or how many tourists could arrive this season. Seychelles began asking how the ocean could remain valuable decades into the future. That is what makes this small country's story different. It does not have a large landmass to expand into, so its vast ocean has to be treated like a national savings account. But that kind of savings account is fragile. The more Seychelles depends on the sea, the greater the shock when the world around it changes. Once Seychelles began treating its ocean as a national asset, the story entered a much larger arena. The waters around Seychelles sit along important routes in the Indian Ocean, a region connecting East Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Through these routes, commercial ships, fishing vessels, patrol boats, and the interests of major powers all move through the same maritime space. India has been one of the most active countries in building ties with Seychelles. Since 2015, India and Seychelles have discussed the development of facilities on Assumption Island, a small island located far from Mahé and facing the Mozambique Channel. Officially, the facility was meant to help Seychelles monitor its waters. That explanation makes sense. The country's maritime area is huge, while its population and patrol capacity are limited. But for India, Assumption Island carries another value. The island sits near important shipping routes used by Indian cargo. The Indian government has said the cooperation would include anti-piracy operations, surveillance of Seychelles' exclusive economic zone, prevention of illegal fishing, illegal hunting, drug trafficking, and human trafficking. In other words, the facility would give India an additional set of eyes in the Western Indian Ocean. But the plan did not move smoothly. In 2018, the Seychelles Parliament did not ratify the agreement. Some people worried the island could turn into a foreign military base. Those concerns grew because the plan included the construction of an airstrip, a jetty, and supporting facilities. The Seychelles government later said the old project would not continue. The Assumption issue returned after President Patrick Hermany visited India in February 2026. India announced a $175 million economic package for Seychelles, including support for infrastructure and maritime security. The two countries also agreed to cooperate on building a Coast Guard base. But Hermany quickly stressed that there had been no discussion about leasing Assumption Island for a military base. China is also present in Seychelles, but through a different path. Relations between the two countries have existed since 1976, and in 2024, they were upgraded to a strategic partnership. China exports machinery, high-tech products, agricultural goods, and steel to Seychelles. Seychelles, in return, exports seafood to China. Chinese vessels have also visited Seychelles several times, including naval ships and the hospital ship Peace Ark in 2024. This leaves Seychelles standing between two major interests. The country accepts cooperation from both sides, while trying to make sure its islands and waters are not fully shaped by outside powers. That competition of interests also reaches the tuna industry. In 2026, the European Union and Seychelles agreed on a new fisheries protocol for the 2026 to 2030 period. The agreement gives 38 European Union vessels access to catch tuna in Seychelles' exclusive economic zone. In return, Seychelles receives 5.75 million euros per year, including 3 million euros annually, to support fisheries policy, research, surveillance, and the fight against illegal fishing. From here, Seychelles' ocean can no longer be seen only as a source of income. It has become a space of strategic interest. India wants to strengthen its maritime influence. China maintains economic and political ties. The European Union needs tuna access. Foreign vessels need ports, permits, and operating routes. Seychelles receives money, support, and bargaining power. But the more players enter the space, the harder the country has to work to keep its waters under its own control. Behind the luxury tourism, tuna exports, blue economy projects, and big power competition, Seychelles still carries one risk that cannot be hidden. This country does look like a success story for small island nations. In 2025, the IMF estimated that Seychelles' real economic growth would reach 5.1%, supported by record tourist arrivals. Public debt also fell to around 53.6% of GDP, while foreign exchange reserves rose to more than 4 months of imports. Those numbers show that Seychelles' economy is in a strong position, but they also reveal where that strength comes from. This country lives heavily from outsiders who come in, spend money, stay in hotels, and bring foreign currency to its small islands. That kind of dependence means Seychelles is never truly far from global shocks. Then there is another threat, slower, quieter, and much harder to avoid: climate change. The World Bank has identified the main climate risks for Seychelles as sea level rise, storm surges, coastal flooding, rising temperatures, and extreme weather. For a small island nation, this is not a distant warning. Many of Seychelles' most important assets are located along the coast: hotels, roads, ports, the airport, settlements, and workplaces. If the coastline is damaged, the problem is not only the loss of a beautiful view. The country's income is at risk. That vulnerability becomes even clearer because Seychelles' blue economy depends on the same natural environment. The IMF has noted that fisheries and coastal tourism account for around 35% of Seychelles' GDP, while much of its critical infrastructure sits only around 2 to 4 meters above sea level. That means Seychelles has built a high-value economy very close to the water. As long as the sea remains calm, Seychelles looks like paradise. When the sea changes, the cost of defending that paradise can become enormous. Seychelles became rich because of the ocean. Its future will also be decided by how well it protects that same ocean.